My name's Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic. So, Sheldon, who's not here today, God bless him, he told me this was on the 11th step. And I said, no, I think you're wrong. I think it's 10 step. And
10.
I know it's 10. You're like one of my fucking clients, you know? They never let me fucking finish a sentence. I treat them the same way I treat you. It's rude to interrupt people. Jesus. So I said, no, I think it's 10. He says, no, you're definitely on 11. And so I told everybody on Zoom. Everybody on Zoom thinks I'm on 11. But I'm gonna get this train. Rob, we're gonna do this. This is gonna be on the 10th step, but it's also gonna be on the 11th step. I'm not responsible. You're the guys who are responsible. I'm not gonna paint you a picture. I'm gonna tell you what the deal is, you know? And then you can either think about it or you can say, who invited this fucking clown anyway? You know what I mean? I could do better, and I don't really give a shit. You know, I'm just going to do what I do, okay? So I'm in my 46th year. I have 46 years of experience being, what gives you a new perspective? Do you even know that? Repeated humiliation, final crushing of self-sufficiency. So you haven't lived in it until you've gone through 46 years of that shit. You know what I mean? It changes your perspective on things. So the only thing I can do is give you my perspective on the 10th step and the 11th step. And the one thing I pray I do at every meeting, besides giving something out that maybe helps somebody, is that I tell you something that maybe you've never heard before. You know, I think alcoholics are easily bored. What do you think? Do you think alcoholics are easily bored? You know, I think you can go to meetings, you can do a lot of things many, many times, and after a while, if you're an alcoholic, you're looking for something else. Another wife, another girlfriend, another job. You just get easily bored. So I don't want to bore you, okay? So that's the important thing, not to bore alcoholics. Give them something else. I'm going to give you something else. I'm going to give you my perspective on step 10 and step 11, sort of like step 11, a little step 11 at the end. And I'm going to throw it out to you, okay? Now, the manner in which I'm going to throw it out is like a jigsaw puzzle. I mean, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. I'm gonna throw out some stuff. I'm just gonna throw it out to you, you know? And somehow, and you may understand it, you may not understand it, but at the end, if you put it all together, you may see this thing the way I see this thing. Okay? And I'm going to do a little Alki translation of the book, okay? I don't know how you translate the book. You know, we read the book, we see things, and sometimes we don't see things, you know? So I'm going to translate part of the book for you the way I see it. I never saw it when I was 2 years sober, or 5 years, or 10 years, or 15 years sober. I never saw it this way. 46 years, it's absolutely clear to me. So I'm going to see whether it's clear to you. So I'm going to read you something from Vision for You. I'm going to read you 3 paragraphs. There's 3 paragraphs. This is our basic text, written by Bill Wilson. This was published when he had 3.5. He wrote it when he had 3.5 years. Who knows anything? Now, I believe it's divinely inspired, because I don't believe anybody with 3.5 years who's not divinely inspired could write this thing. I give him a lot of credit. I give Bill Wilson a lot of credit for a lot of things. Somebody thinks I put him down. I don't put him down, okay? I just want to speak the truth. He did a lot of incredible things. And that's the bottom line. So I'm just going to read you some stuff that he said at 3.5 years, and I'm going to read you some more stuff, and I'm going to send you some stuff, and let's see what we can put together in a picture. I know we have new people here, and we have some people that have 10 years, 15 years, 20, 30 years. Have you guys ever heard of anybody in AA drinking after having a lot of time sober?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe I've gone to around 40,000 meetings. I sponsored hundreds of people, okay? It doesn't make me immune, but I've seen people that have done that deal and they drink again. Have you guys ever heard of anybody who puts together a lot of time in AA and really does all the steps and sponsors a lot of people committing suicide? You know, that happens.
Yeah.
You know, that happens. Now, this is something you may not have seen. Have you ever seen somebody with 20 or 30 years who talks and thinks like he has 3 months? Now, the reason why you may not see it as much as I see it is because most of you guys, when I say most of you guys, I'm not pointing a finger at you. I'm just saying what I think is probably true because it's always been true in AA. Most of you guys don't have guys with 30 years taking you to the side and say, can I talk to you about something? You understand? Because usually the way it happens in AA is guys that have X amount of time go to people who have X plus amount of time. Usually a guy with 30 years doesn't go to a guy with 3.5 years and say, can I pour out my heart to you and explain to you what I'm going through? You understand? So if you have 15 years, you're not going to have a lot of experience talking to a guy with 25 years who's a thumb-sucking crybaby and acting like he has 2 weeks. It's not going to happen. So to you see somebody with 25 years at meetings, not acting up, not dancing on the table nude or anything like that. You think he's okay. You think, well, he's got 25 years. You see him pick up a down at 25 years, man, I wish I had 25. He must have it together. You don't realize how crazy he is unless you actually sit down and talk to him. I talked to a guy with 37 years the other day. I had to hang up on him. After 30 minutes of trying to help him, I realized I can't help this guy. This guy is gone. It's 37 years. I had to hang up before I got mean. I can do that. I can get mean. I didn't want to get mean on him. I figured hanging up was mean enough. I said, look, I can't take this bullshit anymore. I hung up the phone. It started affecting me. I said, if I listen to 5 more minutes of this, I'm going to have to fucking join Al-Anon. It'll be, I can't deal with it. I can't deal with the fucking bullshit. That's the bottom line. So why do people with, I saw a guy with 40 years drink again, who was well known in AA and everybody loved him. And the smartest thing I could come up with in 2 years is, this is what I came up with based upon my experience. Because I was told the one thing you have to take, 100% is the first step. So I see somebody drink, the only thing I come up with, which is righteous, I think it's in I don't know if it's in the book or not. I think it's in the book. Somebody says it, but the only thing I could come up with was a guy with 40 years who started rooms, who sponsored hundreds of people. The only thing I could come up with is, well, that guy obviously didn't take the first step. Such bullshit. How does a guy go to AA for 40 years, start rooms, teach the steps, sponsor people, and you say, if that was true, if as long as you took the first step 100%, you never drink again, we don't even need steps. We just need a bumper sticker. We just need the first, that's it. And I know now, after many years of watching people almost drink, getting suicidal, getting involved in self-pity and depression, everything. Bill Wilson got involved in that. Bill Wilson, did he take the first step? I don't know. If you read, I send out an email, and attached in the email is The Next Frontier by Bill Wilson, Emotional Sobriety. Where at 22 years, he said I was going down the fucking tubes. That's why I give him credit for that. I think he wanted people to know because he published it in the Grapevine. He said, I was going down the fucking tubes. And not only me, I noticed there's a lot of old timers that are going down the tubes. They've passed the booze test. They managed not to drink, but they're whacked out crazy. They don't have any emotional sobriety, and that's me. I was incredibly depressed, and I didn't know what the problem was. And I was trying to figure out why the 12 steps could not solve the depression problem. He didn't say I couldn't figure out why I couldn't get more medication. He didn't say I didn't figure out, what do I need more in my life? He didn't say, well, maybe it's the 4th step. Maybe he said, I can't figure out. And I wrote down the steps, why I couldn't be fixed by the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Did he ever figure it out? I'd like to think he did, but I'm not sure. I know if you read that thing, there's some hints. Well, one of the things he said is my basic problem was dependence. I couldn't get rid of my dependence on the things of this world. My dependence on people, circumstances, money, finances, and my dependence on Alcoholics Anonymous. It says, what does it say? It says, I'm spiritual, not religious. Do you know some people think Alcoholics Anonymous is a religion? they look down on the Baptists and the Catholics and the guys who love Jesus and all that sort of stuff. And they don't realize that they believe that AA is a power, what do they say at the first part of the book? They say, there is one that has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. Have anybody read that? That's in the big book. That's also in the Bible, by the way. It's also in the Bible. It's all over the big book. Burn the idea into every Alcoholics Anonymous. It's in the last page of the big book. The last page of the big book says, but we won't, what if we don't have you, Bill Wilson? What if we don't have you? What if we don't have a response? He says, that's irrelevant. God will determine whether you know us or not. Your real reliance must be on God. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. As a matter of fact, God, if you have a relationship with him, will even point you to the right people. See to what your relationship with him is right. Great events will come to pass for you and countless others, and you can join us in another fellowship, the fellowship of the Spirit. It's not the fellowship of, to be a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, all it takes is a desire to stay sober, physically sober. It used to be, the definition used to be, in order to be a member of AA, you have to have an honest desire to stay sober. You know, they took that away because it was too high a bar for alcoholics, you know? We're talking about a serious desire, being serious. It says in the big book, it says, no matter how far down the scale we have gone, we will always be welcome in Alcoholics Anonymous as long as we mean business. How do you know if somebody means business or not? You know, there's certain tells, like in poker. You know what a tell is? A certain person does something, you know? You know, certain things, like a meeting starts and somebody walks out the door. I say, well, he doesn't. You know, that's a tell. That's a tell. He's bored. He wants something else. That's a tell. It may not be a tell. I was in Toronto speaking to a few thousand people, and I got to the end of my talk, and some guy walked out. I saw him. He walked out the door the last 5 minutes. I've never forgotten that fucking guy. They're driving me to the airport saying that was a great talk and everything like that, and I'm thinking, what the fuck did I say? What did I say? I've been looking for. I was at a meeting at the Life is Good meeting. There was some guy raised his hand. He says, I'm from Toronto. I said, are you that guy? You're the guy? I couldn't get it out of my mind. You're the guy. Now, you see, the guy's wife was probably giving birth to quadruplets in the hospital down the street, but he couldn't tear himself away from my meeting. You know what I mean? And because I don't know why he walked out the door, you know, but that's like a tell for me, you know? You know, how people act and what they do. There's certain things alkies do that tell you a certain thing about them, you know? So I'm just going to tell you a little something. You'll see what you can do with it, okay? You'll see the way I think. You may not want to see the way I think. You may hope you never see the way I think, but I'm going to tell you a few things. So, hey, here's something. Listen to this. Bill Wilson says, after having this white light experience, the spiritual wind, the room lighting up and everything like that, he says, in Alcoholics Anonymous number 3, I'm pointing to you where it says, I'm not lying to you about this stuff. If you don't have to believe me, just believe Alcoholics Anonymous, our basic text. He says, so what happens is this, Bill Dotson, who's the man on the bed, you know, the 3 guys, there's Bill, there's Bob, there's a Bible, you know, and then there's Bill Dotson on the bed, the guy with the funny t-shirt on and everything like that. And he says, this is what he says in his story. He says he was sober. He was physically sober. I'm physically sober. You're physically sober. Physically sober. What does that mean to be physically sober? Maybe not much. I don't know. Maybe a lot. I don't know what the story is. We fill out medallions, physical sober. So he's physically sober, and he says, this is what he says. I knew there was something more. Something I hadn't got. You ever watch somebody in AA or deal with somebody? Maybe you're a sponsor. I mean, that's how I picked up my sponsor, man. I want what he has. You know, it says in the book, if you want what we have and willing to go to any length to get, then you're ready. Then you're ready. You're not even ready unless you want what somebody else has. How do you pick a sponsor? You say, I like that guy. I want what he has. Now, here's the deal. You don't even know what he has. You don't have a clue as to what he has. If you had a clue, you still wouldn't understand it. Because you don't get it intellectually. It's not taught. It's caught. Somehow, some way, there's some sort of confluence of hanging around certain people, seeing the way they talk, seeing what they do, being criticized by them, being criticized by your sponsor, and seeing how they handle other things, and all of a sudden you start thinking the way they think. So like some sort of osmosis. And one day you wake up 10 years later and you are that guy you wanted what he has. And you don't even know how it happened. All it knows is you're dealing with life and you're saying things and you're thinking things. I'm in the street. I got a flat tire in my car. I call my sponsor. I say, I can't believe it. It's 9 degrees weather. I'm in the rush hour traffic. Got a flat tire in my car. And he says, you have a car? Man, a lot of people don't have cars. I called my sponsor. I said, my boss is such an asshole. He's unbelievable the way he treats. He says, you have a job? Yeah, so many people. I stopped calling the son of a bitch because why would I call? I know what he's going to say. Next thing you know, every problem I have, without even thinking about it, it's you got a car, and all of a sudden it's not a problem anymore. You got a car, you got car problems. It's not a big deal. Some guy comes up to me, he says, I got a flat tire. I said, you got a car? It's part of my life. How did that happen? That I changed the whole perception and attitude of the way I was. When did it happen? Did it happen because I hung around? I don't know. These things happen over and over again. The more time you spend with these people, if you spend time with these people. So this guy says, I knew there was something more, something I hadn't got, and I'm trying to find the answer. I used to run around meetings following men, Eddie Edwards, all sorts of men, following my sponsor, guys who were doing step series, to learn the secret, because if you're an alcoholic, you want 30 years in 30 minutes. You know what I mean? I got 1 year. How can I get 30 years in 30 minutes? By the end of the meeting, they'll give me the secret. It don't work that way. Here's the secret. You need to do 30 years to get 30 years. And sometimes even 37 years won't help. Because you're not listening, because you're blind. So he says, I knew there was something more, something I hadn't got. And I was sitting with Bill Wilson, with my wife in the kitchen, eating a tuna fish sandwich. He doesn't, I threw in the tuna fish sandwich thing, but it's in the book. He says, and Bill says this to his wife. He's not even talking to Bill Dotson. He's talking to Bill Dotson's wife, Henrietta. And this is what he says. He says, the Lord has been so wonderful to me. And by the way, the Lord, he's talking about Jesus Christ, whether you know it or not. You don't have to like it, but that's the truth. Because in the first 4 years, all they did was read the Bible. Dr. Bob said the books we found absolutely essential were 1 Corinthians 13, Sermon on the Mount, and the book of James. It said, first things first, we're seeking first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. All things will be added unto you. He said, if you really want to know about AA, the all AA program is in Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And it's all over. If you read Dr. Bob in the good old times, that's all they did. You couldn't get into an AA meeting unless you get down on your knees, gave your life to God. You had to do the third step before the entry into Alcoholics Anonymous. So you didn't have any idiots saying things, well, if they had talked about God, I wouldn't be here, because they wouldn't have been there. That was how they divided up. That's how they separated the men from the boys. That's how they separated the bullshit out, the people that really, because if you weren't willing to bend a knee, you weren't that desperate to get out of alcohol, out of drinking. And you want to know something else? There were people, alcoholics like you and me, with a chief characteristic, that were willing to bend the knees, because that's how desperate they were. That's how they realized whether people were serious. It wasn't like today, well, let's not hurt their fucking feelings. Now I'm not saying this is wrong or right. I'm just saying the way it is. And if this is the first time you ever hearing any of this stuff, which is in our literature, it's because it's never talked about in AA, because you're in a fellowship that doesn't talk about God and gets nervous when anybody talks about it. But unfortunately, there's a part of the program that says if you do this thing right, you lose for your people. And I don't know whether they've done it right, but I'm not scared of you all. Because my sobriety doesn't depend on whether you like me or not. And if I'm not scared of you, that means I'm not scared of whether other people outside this meeting think about me. And that's a real bondage. That's the real disease. That centers in your mind, not your body. So I don't second guess myself or I worry. So Bill Wilson, that's what Bill Wilson says. And we call that the golden text. That's what he called the golden text. He says Bill was very, very grateful for his sobriety. And he gave God all the credit. All the credit. He gave it to God. And that was Bill Wilson. The Lord has been so wonderful to me, curing me of this terrible disease. I got to keep talking about it and telling I got to keep talking about it. I got to keep talking about it and telling other people. And I understand about that because that's what I do. At 46 years, that's what I do. I talk about the Lord, what he's done for me in my life, and I tell other people. I never grew out of it. I maybe grew a little bit away from it because we have a tendency as alcoholics to leave the God we love. We have a tendency to leave that deal, and that's what I'm going to talk about as far as 10th step. So you see it a little bit differently. So then a few months later, Bill Wilson says this: I needed God, and I wanted God, and he came. Now listen to this, but he said, soon worldly clamors blocked him out. What do you think worldly clamors are? That good-looking guy? Why don't I have a husband? That job, that money, that blonde in the back row? What do you think worldly clamors are? You are surrounded. You go to maybe one meeting a day if you're smart. Most people don't do that. For 1 hour, and the rest of the time, you're watching TV, you're watching commercials, and you're seeing all the stuff out there, the worldly stuff. They say, oh, if I only had that, I'd be okay. If I only had that new blouse, I'd be okay. If I had this, I'd be okay. You're surrounded by worldly clamors. And you go to like one AA meeting, and they don't even talk about God, and you figure, you're going to be okay because you're not drinking. Okay? Then, a few months later, Bill Wilson, who said, I got to keep telling about it to other people, he says, Henrietta, this is in Dr. Bob Good Old Timers, I don't think we should talk so much about God or religion. This is the same guy who was saying, the golden text. He said, I don't think we should start talking too much about God or religion. And she says, Bill, you got to stop worrying about pleasing alcoholics. They've been pleasing themselves all their lives. You got to stop worrying about pleasing God, because if you don't talk about God and what God has done for you, you might as well be the Rotary Club, because God's your only salvation. And she says, finally, Bill agreed, which is alcohol code for he didn't really agree. You understand what I'm saying? You have to understand that's alcohol code. Like when an alcoholic says, I'll try to make it to the meeting, that means he's never going to show up. If an alcoholic says, I'll see you at the meeting, that's a 50-50 shot. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, because we're liars. We lie to ourselves and everything like that. That's the nature of alcoholism. Okay, you got that? No, you don't. Not yet, but you will. What does that mean? Bill Wilson started off at a relationship with God. Oh, let me just throw something out of you. There is one who has all power. May you find him now. AA doesn't have all power. The Fellowship of AA doesn't have all. By the way, you know what the Fellowship of AA is? It's not Well People's Anonymous. AA doesn't have all power. Your sponsor doesn't have all power. I don't have all power. Alcoholics Anonymous, you may see a little bit of power. You may get a little of power. It may point you towards a power, but you can't have a relationship with AA. The steps do not have all power. They may be tools to get you to the one who has all power, but they don't have you can't have a relationship with the 4th step. You don't have a relationship with the 11th step. You don't have a relationship with the 12th step. When they say there is one who has all power, that one is God, may you find him now. When they say in the back of the book, see to it your relationship with him is right, they're not talking about the steps. They're not talking about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And a lot of people say the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous is the thing. I don't belong to religion. I don't believe this. Forget about Jesus. Forget about all that. I am in AA. I am spiritual, not religious. And they misunderstand what AA is all about. They misunderstand. They say, see what your relationship with him is right. That there is a God, and the God of your understanding, let me tell you something. If you really look deep into it and you're having problems, it's because you don't understand him. Because you don't have any idea who the hell he is. And so how can you do a 6th step where the key to doing the 6th step, according to the book, is you have to get, by the way, which was written by a well-loved clergyman. There's a hint there. There's a hint there. Well-loved clergyman. The key to taking the 6th step is you have to get to the point where you want to grow in the image and likeness of your Creator, and the steps are not your Creator. And Alcoholics Anonymous is not your Creator. And your sponsor is not your Creator, and I'm not your Creator. They're talking about God. So there's 2 fellowships in AA. There's a real small fellowship where people are actually believers. You know what the great fact is? That God becomes the central factor of our life, and we're convinced that he lives in our hearts and minds in a way which is indeed miraculous, doing for us what we can't do for ourselves. So there's 2 groups in AA. There's the group, the men from the boys. There's the boys. and they think it's just a giant club, and you get close to the club, and you love the club, and everything like that, and everything works out. You understand what I'm saying? Because you're close to A and you go to meetings. And for them, what happens is the meetings get boring, and worldly clamors sink in. It may take 10 years or 15 years or 20 years. And the next thing you know, all of a sudden, they're not going to meetings. Because they got 10 years, they got 20 years, and there's a blonde in the corner over there, there's a blonde over there, there's money over there, something like that. And all of a sudden, they're not going to meetings that much because there's a hockey game. All of a sudden, they're not the ones that are on the fiery line of life, and their whole life is about trying to please God and focusing on God and trying to help other people, which is our job, by the way, to be of maximum service to God and other people. They're not taking it serious. They're lukewarm. You know what they are? They're middle of the road. There is no middle of the road. God is everything or he's not. Let me tell you, Bob Smith God was everything or he's nothing. When if you look at Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, when he went into this is the way he 12-step. He said, "You believe in God?" First question, "You believe in God?" He said, "What?" And then what did he say? What was it? Bill Dotson said. I think it was Dotson. Was it Dotson? No, it was Clarence said, "What does that have to do with it?" Bob said, "Everything." He said, "Well, I guess so. Guess nothing. You either believe in God or you don't." He says, "Okay, I guess I do. Good. Get down on your knees off the hospital bed. We're going to say a prayer." And he gave his life to God. And that's when Clarence said, he said, "I did what I was ordered to do. There were no suggestions." This gets serious. This is life and death shit. You know, there are some people that are going to drink or blow their brains out or never make it and feel sad, be like 37 years and be like a 2-year-old. And those are the boys. And then there are the men and the women. So let me read something to you. I got a little time, and then I'm going to give you. I'm going to say one other thing, and then maybe you'll sort of see what I'm getting at. This is on chapter 11, Vision for You. Okay, I'm going to read 3 paragraphs. That's okay. Even you'll get something out of this. I'm going to read 3 paragraphs. See, listen to this because it's new shit. You can steal this stuff. Okay. Okay. Here we go. Don't encourage him. Don't do that.
Sorry.
Don't encourage him.
I'm sorry. You're right.
Okay. I'm going to read these. You've heard it before. Now listen. You ready? Here we go. I'm going to do it fast. I hate to do it fast, but for most normal folks, drinking means conviviality, companionship, and colorful imagination. That's me. It means release from care, boredom, and worry. It is a joyous intimacy with friends and a feeling that life is good. That was me. But not so with those last days of heavy drinking. The old pleasures were gone. They were but memories. Never could we recapture the great moments of the past. There was an incessant yearning to enjoy life as we once did. Heartbreak and obsession that some new miracle of control would enable us to do it. There was always one more attempt and one more failure. That was me. Are you guys alcoholics?
Yeah.
Okay, I figure that's you. Because he wrote it to us, okay? And I know it's you, and I'll tell you why I know it's you. It says, the less people tolerated us, the more we withdrew from society and life itself. That's true. That was me. I loved drinking alone. You know, I mean, when I was in a bar and I was drinking, I thought I felt so low. I felt so out of it. But when I was alone with my record player playing my music, I have a vivid imagination of all the people that were around me telling me how much they love me. It's unbelievable. I love to live in fantasy rather than reality. Okay, it says, the less people tolerated, the more we withdrew from society as we became subjects of King Alcohol, shivering denizens of his mad realm, the chilling vapor that is loneliness settled down. You get that? You understand that? It thickened, ever becoming blacker. Some of us sought out sordid places, hoping to find understanding, companionship, and approval. Momentarily we did, then would come oblivion and the awful awakening to face the hideous force horsemen, terror, bewilderment, frustration of the pair. Now listen, here's the last line. Unhappy drinkers who read this page will understand. Do you understand? Yes. Is there anybody that doesn't understand that? Because you might be in the wrong fellowship. If you're an alcoholic, you understand that shit, right? That's why you're here. You start drinking, you have a disease that enters in your mind and not your body, and you end up dog shit. You understand? Now, this is my interpretation. You know, this is, I'm saying it to you in alky, okay? I know they say don't say curse words, and I don't even know. Somehow we get here, I don't know why we're pissed off at church, because those are the righteous people. We become the most righteous assholes in the world in here. Russell said the word fuck. Don't listen to anything he says. I'm only saying what's going on in your mind. Don't like you because you're all full of bullshit. Looking at what you know something? God does not look, this is out of the 1 Samuel. God does not look at your stature, at your weight. You know who God looks like? He doesn't look at man the way man looks at man, because this is right out of the Bible, what they read. He looks at a man's heart. He wants to know what's in your heart. And if your heart is bullshit, it doesn't matter what you're wearing. You guys are more worried about saying the word God or the Lord in Alcoholics Anonymous because people may not like you. You know what I mean? You're looking around and say, well, did you say the word fuck? That's what you worry about. What fucking bullshit. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, I like you guys. I know I yell sometimes. But I got to tell you, sometimes I just look at you and you piss me fucking off. You know what I mean? I'm just, okay, now wait a second. Stop there, okay? You're drinking, you go down the tubes, you hit bottom, right? Now, here's the good part. Pay attention to this, please. Jesus Christ. What's the matter with you? Now, wait a second. Now and then, a serious drinker, an alcoholic, says, I don't miss it, comes into AA. They're talking about people that are in AA now. They says, I don't miss it at all. I said that. I feel better, I work better, I'm having a better time. I've said that. You know, come to AA and you get all excited about AA. You're not drinking, it's a miracle, you're all blown up, you're on the pink cloud, you think it's the greatest thing in the world, this is incredible, I'll never leave this, I'm home, I found my people, this is incredible, I feel better, I look better, I ain't never gonna drink again, everything's wonderful. I'm having a better time. I love people in AA. As ex-problem drinkers, as sober people, as ex-problem drinkers, we laugh at that shit. We know our friend is like a boy whistling in the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. You know, we're delusional. We can't separate the truth from the false. This is the real disease. This isn't drinking. Drinking is not disease. Drinking is a symptom of the disease. The real disease centers in your mind, not your body. You're as fucked up, sober, physically, as you are drinking. You just don't get arrested for driving while lusting, or driving while feeling sorry for you, or driving while being filled with self-pity. Let me tell you something. Physical sobriety does not make you sober.
I did.
What did you do?
I picked up a prostitute coming out of a meeting.
Don't be like him. Okay. We know our friend is like a boy within the dark to keep up his spirits. He fools himself. Inwardly, he would give anything to take a half a dozen drinks to get away with them. You know, maybe half a dozen drinks, maybe spend more money than he makes, you know, so buy something, make him feel better. Do a lot of things. He will presently try the old game again, for he isn't happy about his sobriety. Do you think it's possible to have years of sobriety and not be happy? Let me tell you something. Do you think it's possible to have years of sobriety and not be happy and doing everything we do in here and not realize that you're not happy? You know, the only time you can realize, I love that thing in the Acts 8 where the Apostle Philip walks up to the eunuch, and if you guys don't know the Bible, you wouldn't know that, but I'll just throw it out. And the Holy Spirit tells him to walk up to the eunuch, because the eunuch is reading the Bible, and he says, do you know what you're reading? He says, how can I understand it unless somebody shows me? So unless you're confronted by, listen, if you don't see what I saw in AA the first 3 months, you'd never know it. A guy named Al Kennedy, dying of cancer, 6 months to live, standing in an AA meeting, nobody knew this, standing in an AA meeting, loving on people, telling his story. Helping people and never mentioning it. And he walks out the door and I turned to my sponsor. I said, well, what group does he belong to? That guy is incredible. I wish I'd like to be like him. I want to know. He says, Russ, he's dying of cancer. I thought I didn't hear him. I said, no, I'm talking to the guy just at the meeting. Al Kennedy, he had about 45. He says, Russ, he's dying of cancer. He has 6 months left. What do you mean? He didn't say it. I said, I know he didn't say it, but he's dying of cancer. If I had a hangnail, that's good for 3 weeks of meetings. You know what I mean? Now, if you don't see something like that, you think that AA is about not drinking. You see something like that, your vision of where you could go in AA goes, how do I go to the place where what drug do I have to take to go to the place where I'm not worried about dying? Where I'm not worried about being broke? Where do I get that drug? Because, that's around the corner for you guys. He cannot, so it goes. He will presently try the old game again, for he ain't happy about his sobriety. He cannot picture life without alcohol. Someday he will be unable to imagine life either with alcohol or without it. Then he will know loneliness as few do. He will know loneliness as few do. He will be at the jumping off place. He will wish for the end. So you know what that paragraph means? Let me tell you what that means. So if you drink and you're an alcoholic, you finally get to a place where you hit bottom. And if you're sober and you're an alcoholic and you stay sober, you will finally get to a place where you hit bottom. These are two guys. First guy was drinking and he hit bottom. Second guy wasn't drinking in AA and he eventually hit bottom. You don't see that? You're not sharp enough to understand what that means? It means just because you're in AA doesn't mean you're not going to fall down and fail. So what is that all about? What is that all about? Do you think it actually comes to a time? I know there are people on Zoom. I know all these people on Zoom, friends of mine. I know there's a guy on Zoom that had 22 years and he drank. I know this gal on that Zoom right now had 35 years and she was lonely. Until she had, so I reached 10 years and I was going out of my mind and I was sponsoring people and going out. I know you guys hear this bullshit that the reason people drink is because they stop going to meetings. People drink going to meetings. People drink doing the step. People drink doing. There comes a time in AA where the fourth step ain't going to say, when you got cancer and you're in the MRI and everything like that, and you don't know whether you're going to live or die, and you're locked up in that cage, and you're going through 23 things. Something, let me tell you something. So you start doing the fourth step, see how that helps. If you don't know him, if you don't have a relationship with God. You see what happens when the real shit happens. When the IRS comes and takes all your money, you just do a fourth step. You just do a fifth step. You see how that works out. And you may do all that. And something, you may sponsor people. It may stop you from drinking. But I'll tell you something. You ain't going to be doing the two-step. You're only going to be skipping down the roads of sobriety. There's going to be shit that's coming down on you that you're not going to believe. And you know something? There's going to be no alcohol or a drug that's going to anesthetize you so that you feel better for 15 minutes and then wake up again to the bullshit. And it may take 15 years. It may take 22 years. It may take 10 years. Bill Wilson, it took 22 years. Bill Wilson wrote a book, you know what I mean? Not a book, an essay. It's attached to the thing, The Next Frontier. 22 years sober, doing all the steps, knew it more than anybody else, wrote the book, something? And this is the amazing thing. He wrote this thing that I just read to you when he had 3.5 years, and it happened to him at 22 years. You understand what I'm saying? He wrote this shit at 3.5 years, and at 22 years, he was that guy. He was that guy. And I've known hundreds and hundreds of people who have gotten time here. And all of a sudden it gets tough. You know why? Because those worldly, because the rooms get boring and stuff. Okay, you got about 5 minutes here. I'm going to wrap. You guys know the story. I'm going to tell it real fast. So if you don't know it, I'm sorry, but the story. Me and my wife. I'm married to this wonderful young lady, and I was bored. That happens. When you're an alcoholic, you marry somebody because they look, you get a new car. You love this car, the Corvette, it's fantastic. You drive the car around. After about a year, it's like a used car. You want a new car. You get a wife. She's great. She's gorgeous and everything like that. You love her and everything. You lust her and everything like that. You love her and all that sort of stuff. You have a kid. You have a house and everything like that. All of a sudden, she's like a used wife. You go to the bar, you know what I mean? Or you hang out in the bars and you look around, you see the redhead, you see the blonde, you see this, man, if I wasn't married, I'd have that. If I wasn't married, I'd have this and all that sort of stuff. You with me? And all of a sudden it gets boring at home, but it's exciting in the bar. That's the worldly clamor. The bar is the worldly clamor. And so I end up getting divorced. So we go to a marriage counselor because she wanted to go to a marriage counselor. We're going through a divorce. And so I have to go. I don't know why, because I felt guilty not going. The greatest thing in the world is when my wife divorced me because I didn't have the guts to say I wanted divorced. She divorced me. And then she says, well, let's go to marriage because we had a kid and everything like that. The marriage counselor asked my wife 3 questions. What do you want to change about Russell? I have no idea what she said. She said three things. She probably said, come home for dinner. Maybe she said something about my drinking. I don't know. Because I'm thinking, and I'm as sober as I am right now, and here's what I'm thinking. I have a date with this good-looking redhead that night, and I'm about to get out of this marriage so I can go out and do what I want to do, and that is jump on more women than I could possibly do with. You know what I mean? And they're trying to drag me back in like the Godfather, and I don't want this to happen. And he turns to me, he says, what are the three things you want to change with Ronnie? And I say, I just want to date other women. And that was the end of the session. That was the end of the session. So why would a guy who's married to a young lady who gave him a child, he's a wonderful, wonderful person, who he said to himself when he first saw her, if I had that gal, I'd be okay. That gal would change my life. Why would a guy like that turn into a guy who's sober, physically sober, say that kind of shit? You know why? You remember what I was thinking about? The redhead. There's going to come a time in your life where as much as you want to go to a meeting, there's going to be a Major League Baseball game on the thing, and you're going to say, I'm 20 years sober. It ain't going to hurt me. I'm going to go to the baseball game. There's going to come a time where you could sponsor people or you could do certain things, and you're going to start looking to the things of this world. You're going to think there's no big deal because I just picked up my 25-year medallion, my 5-year medallion. There's going to come a time where what you get out of meetings, you know what's going to happen? It's not going to be the same kind of feeling. We used to have the Marlboro commercials, smoking more, enjoy. There's going to come a time where meetings used to excite you, and it was incredible, and AA was incredible. There's going to come a time, 5 years, 10 years down the road, where they may even get boring. They may not excite you that much. Same thing over and over and over again. And you may all of a sudden spend less time. Why do people stop going to meetings? They stop going to meetings because they're not getting out of the meetings. Or their sponsor, whatever it is, the same thing got out of it when they had 3 months or 9 months or 10 months, and they're getting cocky about their sobriety. You know what I mean? And they become self-reliant. And they don't even think because it happens so slowly. It's not like you quit AA and you go out and it stops and slowly. You just miss a meeting here, you miss a meeting there. You don't really. How many people do you sponsor? Well, I don't really sponsor people. Well, I sponsor 3 people. I say, well, one doesn't really call me, so you sponsor one person. Well, yeah, but he doesn't listen. You all of a sudden you realize because you put yourself in the crosshairs of somebody like me, and you don't know why you feel the way you do. It says and starts asking questions. How many people you sponsor? How many meetings you go to? I suppose go to 3. I go to 3 meetings a day. You go to 3. Well, you're crazy. Well, yeah, I'm crazy, but I'm sober 46 years. You know what I mean? How many people do you sponsor? How many people, you understand what I'm saying? And it happens slowly. And you know what happens? The worldly climbers start blocking out his presence. That's even if you ever had him. That's assuming you actually had him. Because if all you really had was AA and your membership in AA, you know something? That's not the power greater than yourself that'll solve all your problems. And it may not happen in 3 months or 6 months, but after a while, there's this great thing in the Bible. It's great. I think it's in John, 1 John. It says, do not love the world and the things of this world. You know, the lusts of this world. And if alcoholics or anything, we are addicted to the things of this world, which you get 24/7, and you go to meetings and all it says, you know what they tell you at meetings? Don't drink and go to meetings. Don't drink and go to meetings. Don't drink and go to meetings. Well, what do you do when you're not drinking? What happens if you're not drinking for 10 or 15 years? I'm not saying you don't pay attention to it. It's just not the same thing as when you have like 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. And so what the bottom line is, and this is what I found in my own personal life. It doesn't have to be you. What I found in my life is if you're fortunate enough or blessed enough to find actually a God that you believe in and that you're willing to give your life to and to give your life and focus on him. Like Bill Wilson said in the beginning, the Lord has been so wonderful to me, curing me of this terrible disease. I curing me. I got to talk about it and telling other people. And all you want to do is do his job. And his job is tell people about me, tell people tell people that they don't have to be prisoners to all this crap that's going around. Tell people that they don't have to be like everybody. That they don't have to conform to everybody they see. They don't have to worry about whether or not other people accept them. That they don't have to worry about any of that stuff. They can spend their lives helping people. You know, you find one of those that God, and you understand him and what he wants you to do. And let me tell you the problem with that God, there's rules. That's why people don't like God. That's why people don't like religion. You know why? Because religion has rules. Yeah, there's rules. You're an alcoholic, right? I know what you want to do. You want a God that allows you to do whatever the fuck you want to do. You don't want God telling you what to do or making you feel guilty. You want a God you could say, you work your program, I'll work my program. You're not me. You don't know me. You want to be the king of the hill and in control of everything. So there's really no difference between you drinking or dry. Really. That's your deal. That's the God you want. But you start getting into a God where it starts, we're undisciplined. It says God disciplines us. What do you think it means that? What that means is God has rules as to how you act, what you say, how you think, how you talk to people, all that sort of stuff. And if you're an alcoholic and you don't want to tie yourself to God because that means you have to say certain things and do certain things you don't want to do, that means you don't have humility. And humility is the key to this whole thing. And humility means you do what you're told to do. There are no suggestions. And the people who believe in that stuff, who make that God the central fact of your life, you want to know something? They don't leave. Why would they leave? When they know that they have to serve God and they love God and God's responsible and he has all the power and they know what he wants them to do is they want them to stay. They don't leave. They don't leave. They stay and they talk to other people about this stuff. You understand? Because that's their purpose in life. Their purpose is not to get laid. I'm sorry, the purpose is not to get laid. Their purpose is not to, be popular. Their purpose is not to drive a better car or any of that stuff. You had all that stuff, it got you nowhere. It got you nowhere. And so that's if there's one thing about the 10th step, there's only one word in the 10th step that means anything. Only one word. Continue to take personal inventory. You know what personal inventory is, right? And when we're wrong, promptly admit. You know what that is. You look at all the stuff. Are you doing, what I mean? But there's only one word, and the word is continue. Continue. That's the only, continue doing. And why do people stop continuing? Because you know why? Bill Wilson said it. But soon worldly clamors, mostly within myself, blocked out his presence. Blocked out his presence. You know what Bill Wilson said in that thing he wrote, The Next Frontier? That was The Next Frontier, Emotional Sobriety. He said, I couldn't figure out what it was, but I knew that the answer, he didn't say the answer's in the big book, the answer's there. He said, I knew the answer was in the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi. He said, I knew that's where the answer was. You know what I mean? And, he was just off by a little bit, but there was a hint there, I think, in my opinion. The answer is not necessarily in the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, which is an incredible prayer, which if you could ever get there, read the Litany of Humility, ever get there, it's going to be really something. The answer was, how can you be like St. Francis? Because the guy who authored the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi was a guy named St. Francis. There's a hint there. There's a hint there. Just like there was a hint where it says a well-loved clergyman, there's a hint there. That guy had a God of his understanding. And that God of his understanding caused him to write down the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, which is all about the 11th step. I told you I'd wind up in the 11th step. It's in the 11th step. And so my simple deal is, if you want to if you want to be somebody whose life is based on the prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, why don't you look at St. Francis of Assisi and see what he had going for him and who his God was. So basically, I went from a God of my understanding to a God of other people's understanding, that I wanted to have what they had. A God of Bob Smith's understanding, a God of St. Francis' understanding, a God of that well-loved clergyman's understanding, God of Sam Shoemaker's understanding. A God, and it goes on and on and on, because those guys seem to have their shit together. We begin to see how religious people are okay. And we look at their, we lose all prejudice against that stuff. And I say that to a group of people where I know like 90% of you are going to say, well, that was pretty much bullshit. And that's okay. Doesn't matter, you know? But the bottom line is there'll be 1 or 2 people that say, well, maybe there's a point there somewhere. I don't know. So thank you very much.
Recovery inspiration is sitting right there waiting for you. Rocketed.org AA speaker recordings brings real voices and real stories straight to your ears. Subscribe now so you never miss a new recording dropping. Keep that motivation on tap and help spread the word. Hit subscribe and let recovery find you every single day.